Hi, welcome to a talk about. I will be showing you the top 10 most famous pirates ever to sail the seas. These names once put fear into minds of many people at just the mention of them while they were operating. Please, stay around and I will show you. Edward Lowe was a notorious pirate who was born in 1690 and died around 1724. An English pirate, he is amongst many on this list who lived during what is called the Golden Age of Piracy, which lasted from around 1650 to 1730, a time when piracy really thrived, especially around the New World, with all the wealth transporting back and forth. He was born in London into poverty, starting very young as a thief along with other family members. After some time, he eventually sailed to America and lived in Boston, Massachusetts, where he married, but his wife died after she gave birth to their daughter. He got work as a sailor and found it bad on board, and soon mutinied against his captain with a few others, trying to shoot the captain but missing. They were marooned on a longboat, and, taking charge, Lowe attacked and took a small ship. Now a pirate, attacking ships around the New England coast off North America, he began work with the pirate captain George Lowther, and was soon given a large ship to command. He gained a lot of his success from brutality and ruthlessness, doing terrible things like burning people alive who were tied into ships. He worked his way to the Caribbean, getting a name for himself as someone to be taken down by the law. He would boldly do things like demand supplies from whole towns, putting his fearful name to work. Not much of the rest of his life is clear to history in 1724, and disappears from records, bringing his ending and name into legend. Some say he died from a storm off of Brazil, or escaped and lived out the rest of his days there, and others say he was marooned on an island by his crew, either dying there or being taken aboard a French ship that found him and executed by them for his crimes. Francois L'Olonnais was a French pirate who lived from 1635 to the 1660s. He most hated the Spanish and was brutal in his dealings with them, known as the Flail of the Spanish. He made his way to the Caribbean as a servant, then left that after serving his time and became a buccaneer. These buccaneers hunted wild game in the jungle and did piracy when needed around the colony of Santo Domingo. They attacked the Spanish ships and Francois showed how good he was at this life. The governor of Tortuga gave him a ship for this. He was known for keeping no prisoners alive, and many of his enemies died and didn't surrender in fear of being tortured by him. When he was shipwrecked, after a fight, he survived by hiding under the dead bodies and smearing himself with blood, then escaped pretending to be a Spaniard and convinced some slaves to escape with him. He continued his success, beheading whole crews of those who were sent for him, save for one to tell the tale. Gathering up 700 men and some ships, he attacked the Central American coast and marched inland to San Pedro. It ended up all being a failure since he couldn't get much loot, even torturing victims for it, but not getting any results. The other captains left him, and he too left on his ship with 400 followers, but was shipwrecked again. Ashore, they were constantly attacked by the Spanish and natives. After their numbers dwindled, they made a raft and set sail to sea, but somewhere in the Gulf of Darien, they were attacked by natives. The only surviving man told that Francois was captured, hacked to pieces, cooked over the fire, and eaten. Sir Henry Morgan is next, born in the year 1635 and living until 1688. A privateer, he was someone who did piracy for his country, England. He could attack anyone who was an enemy of his country and still keep on the side of the law when he returned. He had joined the English Navy originally and became a privateer when he was young to get wealth. Most of that younger life, though, is not clear in history. Arriving in Jamaica in 1655, he began attacking the Spanish colonies in the Caribbean on the side of England. He worked his way up as a sailor at first and became a captain of his own ship in 1662 and was successful sometime later as a privateer. When he attacked Portobello, he took the forts by sailing in with canoes by night and even using prisoners as human shields. With the mixture of loot taken and the prisoner's ransom, he took great wealth there. He continued his efforts successfully, with his smart tactics keeping him always ahead of his enemy. He was as ruthless as pirates were, torturing many of his prisoners to get what he wanted. He then did the daring feat of his life by going to Panama and marching inland to take Panama City and its wealth with 1,000 men. It was a tough journey through the jungle, and he lost many along the way. He took the city, but most of the wealth there had already been sent away before he arrived. He was now very rich and retired from this life, not aware that England and Spain had already signed a peace treaty before he attacked Panama. Still, when he was sent back to England, he was met with his fame and knighted, going back to Jamaica. He spent the rest of his life on land, helping improve things and enjoying a nice life of luxury, dying with honor. The next pirate on this list went by several names throughout his life, known as Henry Avery, John Every, Long Ben, and Benjamin Bridgeman. He was born somewhere in the 1650s, and his death date is uncertain. He is supposed to be one of the most successful pirates in history, actually retiring in a short time after becoming a pirate with a lot of wealth, living out his days without being captured or killed as a pirate. There are very little records kept about his early life. Born in England and starting a life at sea at a young age, he was recorded as first mate on Charles II's ship, which was a privateer that went to the Caribbean to attack French ships. After not being paid, the crew mutinied and put Avery their new captain, and they turned to piracy on their own, with the ship renamed the Fancy. They sailed to southern Africa and attacked ships there, continuing around the continent while picking up new recruits and wealth. He eventually was in the Indian Ocean and attacked the Grand Mughal vessels that were returning to India laden with wealth. Joined with other pirates, they caught up, but the other ships fled. The Fancy was able to catch and take a vessel laden with 600,000 pounds of gold, silver, and precious jewels. Each pirate was given 1,000 pounds of it. They were brutal in their taking of the vessel, torturing those they could for information. It ruined the British relations, and a manhunt was sent out after them, with the East India Trading Company being hurt and some of the higher-ups being arrested. A 1,000-pound bounty was offered for his capture. Avery fled to the Caribbean and bribed the governor there. The crew dispersed around the world, and most escaped capture. After this point, the whereabouts of Avery is unclear. He may have went to Ireland under the name Benjamin Bridgeman, with a few others who were caught, but he escaped again, and there are no further records of his life. Sir Francis Drake, who lived from 1540 to 1596. This famed man was a privateer, trader, and explorer among the many kinds of jobs he dealt in. He was born the son of a farmer who lived near the coast. When he was only 13, he went to sea and started his long career aboard, climbing to captain in a short time. In the Caribbean, he and his cousin were attacked by the Spanish Armada while on their slaver ships, and lost everything, barely escaping themselves. This brought an early hatred for the Spanish that stayed with him later. He became a privateer under the Queen of England in 1572 to attack the Spanish ships and began joining when he came to the Caribbean. In his raids, Drake was wounded successfully and took a lot of loot with the silver and gold the Spanish ships were laden down with. In 1577, Drake was sent by the Queen on a voyage to attack Spanish ships in the Pacific and explore for her, sending him around the world. Going around South America and enduring great storms, he was the first Englishman to reach the Pacific Ocean, but also had problems with another man at this point, Thomas Doughty. The man turned the tired sailors against him and was convicted of mutiny. With his own trial he held for the man. He had the man beheaded for it. He had some problems with the natives attacking, but soon made friends with them. He attacked many Spanish ships in the Pacific Ocean who didn't know he was a privateer. He even reached North America and California. Gaining much wealth, he sailed all the way past South Asia, into the Indian Ocean, and around to arriving back in the Atlantic Ocean and England 3 years later. His ships full of great wealth, and was the first Englishman to travel around the globe, the second European in history. He was received by the Queen with much honor and knighted. He continued the fight against the Spanish Empire, successfully destroying and taking much of the wealth the Spanish ships were full of, coming from the New World. He died in 1596 of dysentery and a fever, and was buried at sea. The pirate known as Bartholomew Roberts, or Black Bart, was born John Roberts and lived from 1682 to 1722 during the golden age of piracy. He was born in South Wales and became a sailor early in life, but didn't actually take up piracy until his late 30s. When he was working on a slave ship called the Princess, he was made a slave himself shortly after the ship was captured, and he was one of the few forced to become a pirate. He was well liked from the start, and it was only shortly after that the captain, Howell Davis, died, and he was voted their new captain, which he took, liking the position as captain despite being a pirate now. He changed his name to Bartholomew Roberts at this point, as pirates did to hide the real name. He was well liked, smart, tall, and good looking, as well as dressed always in fine clothing and acted in a polite manner, despite what he was, with many strict rules to live by for his crew, not even allowing them to gamble or overdrink. Though his personality was like this, he was completely cold-blooded, ruthless as a pirate when it came to killing, sometimes even burning entire ships with people aboard if they didn't meet his demands. He was very bold in battle, which gave him great success, one of the most of all pirates, plundering over 400 ships during his lifetime. After capturing a French ship, he called it Royal Fortune, which was a name he kept for his ships. He went about his career throughout the Atlantic Ocean, from the New World of the two American continents to Africa, terrorizing everyone with his name and reputation. Being smart, he would take ships through faking who he was, and then surprising the others at times to get vessels much larger or more powerful than him, and taking the booty he collected. Many other pirates during his time thought him to be the great pirate. He was finally taken in 1722 by Captain Challoner Ogle and the ship the Swallow. The pirate was anchored with his crew, who were celebrating when they caught up to them. His men drunk, Roberts was eating breakfast and finished before he would go up to see what was going on. Already being too late, he was the first to die by a grape shot. Though he wasn't drunk like his men. A lot of gold was found on his ship, and his men were soon taken and put on trial and executed. The largest trial of pirates during this time. The next spot includes a few famous pirates whose lives were entwined together. John Rackham, who is also known as Calico Jack because of his calico cloth he wore, was from England and active during the golden age of piracy. He is known more for his interesting life than for success as a pirate, also having two female pirates aboard his ship in his crew, Anne Bonny, who was born in 1702, and Mary Read, born in 1685. Calico Jack sailed in the Caribbean Sea and the North American coast, grabbing smaller takings for loot. He began his career operating out of Nassau in the Caribbean, which was the capital for pirates at the time. Despite a new governor arriving and offering pardons to the pirates, he rejected it and became a quartermaster under the pirate captain Charles Vane. When the French warship came near, Calico Jack supported an attack, but Captain Vane decided to make a run for it instead, despite most agreeing with Jack, being captain with the final say. The pirates soon removed Vane of command and made Jack the new captain, marooning Charles Vane and some of the crew who had sided with him. After many successful attacks and maneuvers, Jack then went to the governor and got pardons, blaming Charles Vane for forcing them into it. And it worked, since the governor didn't like that man. While ashore, Jack met the soon famous Anne Bonny, and they fell in love despite her being married. He soon ran off again and became a pirate, stealing another ship and joined by Anne Bonny and Mary Read, who was a pirate she had met, still disguised to Jack as a man. They continued to attack smaller vessels and bring a name for being ruthless pirates. In 1720, their ship was attacked and disabled, and they were captured and put on trial in Jamaica. They were hanged for their crimes in Port Royal, but the two women escaped it because they claimed pregnancy. Mary Read died in prison, but with Anne Bonny, there is no historical records of what happened to her. Qing Shi was one of the greatest and most famous pirates ever, living from 1775 to 1844. This woman was a pirate in the China Seas during Emperor Chao Qing of the Qing dynasty. She commanded the Red Flag Fleet that had hundreds of ships and pirates under her, in the tens of thousands. She took on the big empires of the day from around in the west, none able to defeat her. She started off as a prostitute that married pirate leader named Zheng Li, who was from a long history of pirates in his family and had united many other pirate captains together. she was given power to help in the piracy business. Her husband already had one of the best pirate fleets in the China area with his skills and was already called the Red Flag Fleet. In 1807, her husband died in Vietnam, and she began immediately taking the power by using family as alliances and captains who had been loyal to her husband, and putting Chung Pao Sao, her second-in-command, to help with her authority as female in charge. She soon took complete command over the whole Red Flag Fleet. She was known for her ruthlessness, which scared her enemies as well as controlled her own pirates. She attacked and took anything she wanted along the China coast and inland by the rivers, destroying all who withstood her. Eventually, armies were sent after her from the Western empires, but she beat all of them with her fleet. Wanting peace, she and her crew were offered a pardon and able to freely return to land. She took this offer and even kept all of her plunder, living out the rest of her life with it until she died naturally at age 69, making her ultimately very successful with her pirating career, many other pirates not having that same story to tell. William Kidd, or Captain Kidd, as he is referred to mostly, is one of the most known pirates of the golden age of piracy. Living from around 1645 to 1701, his legend comes mostly from his treasure that he buried in his final trial where he was hanged for his crimes. He traveled during his career much of the world, including the New World, with the continent of North America and the Caribbean, and far to the other side of the world in the Indian Ocean, and further to the South China Sea. Born in Scotland, he started off as a sailor when he was young and became a successful merchant, turning to the life of a privateer for his country, employed to attack other ships who were enemies to the nation, making his way to the New World in New York, settling down there a little and marrying a woman. He got to know a lot of the high royals in America and Britain. It was during that time that England was at war with France, and the hire of privateers were common, but an era that was almost at an end. Unlucky for Captain Kidd, who was making a good living of it. He was eventually given a new ship with the backing of a bunch of royals to go to the East Indies to attack French ships. He gathered a crew in New York who were a tough sort to have before heading off. The whole thing went wrong and was disastrous, and with the pressure of his crew, he turned to piracy. He had problems with the crew still after this and even fought one and killed him when he spoke up his disagreement of him. After attacking and taking ships, he was called a pirate by the East India Trading Company, a very powerful organization to be on the wrong side of. Thinking he would be pardoned, Captain Kidd returned back to New York, hiding his treasure and saying he was forced into it. Unfortunately, the times had changed for his sort of work, but he was told he would still get the pardon and to go to England for the trial. There, he was sentenced to death, and his friends didn't come to his aid. He was hung in London with a large gathering of people, overlooking the Thames River, the rope breaking twice before it worked the third time. His body was kept up in chains as a warning for any further piracy. Most of his treasure was hidden away and has stayed a mystery to its location. With a name that was feared and has brought much fame over the years until now, the pirate Blackbeard comes in first on this list. Though the notorious name was given him, he was before known as Edward Teach or Edward Thatch. He lived from around the 1680s to 1718. Little is known about his early life, though English and maybe from a wealthy, well-to-do family, until he became a pirate under the name of Edward Teach. His career was along the English colonies on the North American coast and the West Indies in the Caribbean Sea. He started off as a possible sailor aboard a privateer during the Queen Anne's War that went from 1702 to 1713, a war fought between England and France for control of the New World colonies. After the war, he went to New Providence in the Bahama Islands, and there met Captain Benjamin Hornigold in 1716. Joining his crew, he took charge of his ship after some time under the other man and pirated the seas with their fleet, making his name. They captured a French ship, which later would be called the Queen Anne's Revenge by Blackbeard, loading her with more guns. Captain Benjamin Hornigold retired, taking a pardon offered while Blackbeard continued pirating, meeting the pirate captain of another ship, Stede Bonnet. Sailing together for a while, Blackbeard eventually took charge of his ship after seeing he wasn't a great captain to him. After some time, Blackbeard blockaded Charlestown off of South Carolina, attacking any ship that came near, and held many captives hostage, demanding medicine from the governor, which he eventually received. He shortly after ran some of his ships aground and marooned many of his now large crew on an island, leaving Bonnet a ship and some crew. He left with other members and a lot of supplies and some treasure they had taken, and took the royal pardon that was offered for pirates to stop at that time. Though he had still pirated it after that time, he needed to stop, but most still offered it. Stede Bonnet went on with his pirating career and was soon caught and hanged. One of the houses Blackbeard stayed at during this time is now called Hammock House in Beaufort along the coast and is still there, built around 1700. Blackbeard got his name from his beard and his scary character he was known as, striking fear into those who heard of him. He would light fuses at times from his hat or even beard to make him look insane. He was a tall man and wore many weapons, swords, pistols, and knives about him, and his large red coat. This image he created would have him sometimes take ships without a fight. Eventually returned to pirating, as seems to be a flaw of a lot of famous pirates who could have gotten away. Blackbeard was caught by Lieutenant Maynard while he was aboard his ship entertaining guests with many of his men ashore and attacked. He fired back as he saw the ship got close. Thinking he had done them enough damage, Blackbeard boarded their vessel, the lieutenant having told most of his men to lie in wait below deck for a surprise attack. Blackbeard and Lieutenant Maynard fought for a while, and Blackbeard was finally attacked by another from behind, and then finished off by a few others. He had been shot 5 times and cut 20 before he died. His head was cut off for the reward, the days of this fearsome pirate having ended. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please go drop by my channel I talk about, and don't forget to leave a comment, hit that like button, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you next time.